Acclimate, accentuate, abrasive, abject, acclimate, accord. Honda Accord? It doesn't matter because those aren't the right 6 A's. We're talking about the 6 A's of project-based learning, and today we're talking about the A of assessment practices. Welcome to PBL Simplified for Teachers, where we address your PBL need-to-knows to simplify the PBL process for your classroom. As you look to change your instructional model for project-based learning, it's time to look at your assessment practices as well. Just like project-based learning, the structure of it allows you to be really authentic. It also allows you to do some assessment practices that might not have been practical or possible when you were teaching traditionally. So take this time to look at a couple different things. One of the questions I ask in the book, again, if you look down in the comments or in the description, there will be a link. If you buy the book, you get a free course where I walk you through every one of the chapters. And one of the chapters is on grading. And one of my favorite questions to ask people when it comes to grading is, what does a C mean in your class? If I get a C, does that mean that I know the content, but I didn't turn in any homework? Does it mean that I don't know any of the content, but I participated and turned in homework? Does it mean that I got a big 0 in there somewhere, or I was absent and didn't do my makeup work? Sure, that's on me, but did I choose to do that? Does a C mean that I've got average understanding or mastery of your content, or what's wrapped up in there? So it kind of becomes this loaded question, but I'm telling you, it's worth exploration to dive into that. What's an A mean? What's an F mean? Right? And get an avatar. Think of one kid, like Brooke always got an A. Why is that? Ryan got a C. Bob got an F. What's it look like? Or take two different learners. They both got an F. Is it for the same reason? Same thing with a C and an A. And start to dissect, what does a grade mean in your classroom? I'm not saying you're going to get rid of all grades, but I am saying you should look at that process and make sure that you're measuring what you think you're measuring. Take a look at some of the resources that we've got down in the description. We've got a couple things for you to explore. This idea of should we be giving zeros tends to be a hot topic, but again, I'm not asking you to take one side or the other. I'm asking you to explore them. And now that you have a new instructional model, see if some of these assessment practices can be valid in your classroom. Look at standards-based grading. Got a great blog from one of our PBLers, one of our facilitators, where he walks through his journey of standard-based grading. He hadn't always done it, but as he got into PBL, he saw, I think we could do this a little bit differently. And he's gone through that journey because PBL is part of who he is now, of experimenting, dabbling, and then finding that sweet spot. And just like PBL, he'd never go back. Check out those stories and resources in the description, because the way you're assessing is going to determine a lot of how things work. And again, we don't advocate that you throw out all standardized tests or quizzes. Like, you can still give a unit test. I just want you to know what it means. Right? Like, how are you using some of those formative assessments? Are you using them to create workshops or just to give a grade? What does your rubric mean? Is it a communication tool or strictly a grading tool? Right? When do you give it out? Do you give it out right away or do you give it at the end? I think I'd advocate you give it right at the beginning, right in there with your entry event, so learners know what the path looks like for that journey. What does success look like? So it's also a communication tool. So when you look at assessment practices, look at them a little bit differently now that you're looking at a new instructional model. How can you use data well and strategically to move your learners ahead? I think as you go down that path, it's not the most exciting path filled with glitter and sequence, but it's a worthy path, and it's something to dive into. So find a couple resources and then get a small group of teachers together and just say, hey, what do you think about this? And again, some of them will be heated topics, and say, okay, like, I get that, but let's read this article and then talk about it some more. And start to dive into your practice and make sure that's best for you and best for learners. And as you do that on this 6A journey, I think it'll be one of those steps that'll really up the rigor and intentionality of your PBL units. As we go through this series as well, I want to give another shout out to Attaboy for that music that's at the front and end of all of our videos and our podcast. You should tune into that, the PBL Playbook. In the description, you'll see links to the playbook and also to Attaboy, where you can call them and see what it looks like to do an assembly. They have a really positive assembly about building learners up to be the people that they've been called to be. And they can do that virtually or in person. It's good stuff, folks. As you go down this path and this journey, we're happy to be alongside you so that you can engage your learners, tackle boredom, and transform your classroom.